Express, of course, we're talking about citizenship and what are your rights as a citizen, whether Kenyan or whether you have a dual citizenship, of course. And before we went for the break, we were talking about the case of Miguna. Julie, you are one of the lawyers of Miguna. If you can just explain to us or tell us what exactly happened from yesterday.
Well, last evening, the High Court issued orders in regard to Miguna. One of those was that he should be given access to his advocates. We had papers, a ruling to go and serve, and that he was also to be released forthwith. When we got to the police, four of us, myself, Senior Counsel James Orengo, Advocate Nelson Harvey, and Cliff Ombeta, we were met by a contingent of more than 50 GSU police officers.
50 against 4 people.
50 against 4 people with guns and batons. Now, we had a paper. If this government believes that it is doing the right thing, why is it that we cannot even serve court process? We were beaten brutally by police officers. We had no weapons, we had nothing. All we wanted to do was effect service of a court order and to see Miguna. The court had allowed us to do that. So why is it, if you know that you are on the right, why do you have to resort to such thuggish, brutish, and nasty behavior against advocates who are officers of the court? The actions speak very loudly. I would want to know, who is it who is giving instructions to these police officers? Now, this morning, I have been called by Dr. Miguna from Dubai. As soon as we were thrown out of the airport, 30 or so plainclothes policemen broke down the door because he suspected something was going to happen, so he went and hid himself and locked himself in the toilet. They broke down the door. 30 men sat on him. Then he was injected all over the body with a drug. He doesn't know what he was being injected with. At the command of a police officer who was at the airport on the day we were there when he arrived. We know him. By the time he was put on the plane, he was comatose. He has only just woken up and found himself in Dubai. The plainclothes police officers apparently disguised themselves as Emirates staff and sat with him on the plane. So he doesn't know what else they were injecting him with or what they were doing to him while he's comatose and sitting on the plane. Now again, the question is, he has no visa. On what documents have they sent him to Dubai?
All right, which brings the issue of visas. What types of visas are there? Churchill.
Well, for Kenya, I mean, there are quite a lot of visas that maybe they would have given Miguna. But then, I think for me, this whole question, I want to divert a little bit from the visa thing.
Yeah.
And just try to amplify what my learned friend has said regarding this issue. You see, it is easy for a state to look at denial of citizenship as a question of a right, and they have the power to deny somebody a citizenship. But then it is also another thing for that to imply that you are actually contributing to the statelessness of an individual. And I think this is the moral question that any policymaker in government and any government of any particular person should be able to ask him or herself. That, well, there may be issues with this particular citizen, but then is what we are doing contributing to him belonging to any particular state? It is wrong for us to presume as Kenyans and Kenyan authorities to presume that Miguna belongs to Canada.
Yeah.
It is wrong to presume that. It will be right and it will be in the interest of government, even in terms of broadening the image of the country abroad, to perceive every person who is its citizen or presumed to be its citizen to be handled in a dignified manner, in a manner that implies that that country respects the norms and obligations of the rights to citizenship, which is actually provided for, and there are a lot of declarations, UN declarations, African Charter, that provides for the right to individuals to citizenship. And so for me, I think this is a question of morality of government and the government apparatus in trying to handle this particular person in a manner. And you know, in Kenya, it is easy to look at this as a good thing in terms of the government, you know, the government putting its force on dehorning people who are against it.
Yeah.
But what kind of image are you portraying to people outside there? What kind of image are you portraying to the Kenyans in diaspora who are interested in bringing back investments in the country? What kind of image are you portraying to the investors out there who might want to send their people in this country the way you are treating your citizen? How would you treat a foreigner?
And you know, it brings the question of rights, not just citizens,
Absolutely.
but to any normal human.
Precisely.
The fact that he was sat on, as you say, sat on by 30 men, injected by drugs that we do not know the content.
The state actually participated in a criminal act because that is just kidnap. They literally kidnapped Miguna and then took him to some other place against his will.
Has the Canadian government responded to this?
And that, you know, the contrast is very, very telling. The Canadian government, because Miguna does not deny that he has taken up, that he has a Canadian passport, but look at how the Canadian government has treated and reacted to Miguna, and then how our own government is treating its own Kenyan-born citizen. No less than the High Commissioner visited Miguna at the toilet in which he was being held at JKIA.
3 days.
Yes, because that is a government that recognizes its duties and obligations to its citizens or people who are within his jurisdiction. Now, our Kenyan government, because I expect, my constitution says I have rights, and that the Kenyan government owes me certain duties and obligations. They're here to serve me. I'm not here to serve them. The contract that they have with the Kenyan people is to ensure that our rights are protected. Even if Miguna is in conflict with the law, whether in Canada, in Kenya, in another, the Kenyan government should be the first person to run to his aid, get him, and deal with him in accordance with the law. Look at how other countries deal with their citizens. When an American shows up anywhere in another country, all he has to do is say, I'm an American citizen. And the American embassy will quickly pick him up and then go and deal with him, attend to him. Ours takes our own and we throw them out there and say, we don't care. That should be a chilling factor to all of us because it means I cannot count on my government to protect me when I am outside this country and I run afoul of the law or I run into any trouble. It is no wonder that when we have Kenyans who are in trouble in the Middle East, in South Sudan, it takes so long. They have problems coming back because our government does not understand its duties and its obligations to its citizens. If this is how they have treated Miguna, then the rest of us should be afraid. Unfortunately, we are all looking at it as if that is Miguna's problem.
Yeah.
It is actually a reflection of the mindset of our government and how it views its duties and obligations to its citizens. That they are the ones who will participate in criminal activity to forcefully remove one of its subjects. Now, in 2003, a Kenyan showed up from Ethiopia claiming he's a Kenyan citizen at the border on the basis of, in fact, I don't think he had any papers. He probably just had an ID. He was taken in. He was taken in, they brought him in, and then they investigated his claims. When you go to the Chief Magistrate's Court, court number 1, every day there are people who are brought in, charged on the basis of either you're unlawfully within the country, you're illegally within the country, claiming, either they claim we're Kenyan citizens, some of them might say I'm a refugee, but they first bring them in and then they investigate their claims. If the Kenyan government is sure that Miguna is on wrong, why didn't they take him to a court of law and say, this is an illegal person, he should not be in this country? Let the court decide.
Yeah.
But instead, they are the ones that violate his rights.
Which comes to the question, of course, Miguna's case surfaced and it was public, but then how many other people could be going through the same cases? It's just that people are not aware of.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the issue of airlines having standards and having their own set of rules. How can one travel when they're unconscious?
It's quite unfortunate, the revelations that have been brought out, and I think for me it's just about the dignity, and I still emphasize that. I still emphasize that the provisions of law exists on any person who has gained dual citizenship, any person who might want to regain his status as a citizen in Kenya. But then these procedures, in as much as they exist, the way sometimes the government authorities implement them, it's so, the timings are usually very suspect, and they tend to take political angles that makes every Kenyan out there to lose trust on their contracts with government. And you see, as I still insist that the government authorities must look at the way they handle the Miguna case from the perspective of how other governments view them and how other citizens of other countries view them. It is not, when we look at it internally, it is very easy to forget. But then from a broader IR perspective, this is a big disaster this government is doing to Kenya. And I can tell you for free, when we travel outside of this country, these small things influence the kind of negotiations you have for business and even for deals that you're doing, because it reflects the personality you are. So it's quite unfortunate when government does these things and think that they are doing it to serve their masters, but forgetting those key tenets of image at the global level, and their obligations to adhere to the norms of global declarations of citizenship and the rights of citizens.
You want to add something?
Yes, just to add on to that, if your government treats you this way, do you think that if you're out there, another government will respect you? They'll be like, after all, they don't care for their own, so we can do what we want with them. We will be mistreated out there on the basis that our own government does not respect its citizens.
All right. And then, of course, when Miguna arrived, he was asked to sign a courtesy visa. How does this work? Does this limit, someone coming into the country?
But visas have restrictions. But the fundamental thing is that a Kenyan citizen cannot, I have never been required to come in on a visa as a Kenyan citizen. One of the fundamental rights of a Kenyan citizen is the right to exit and re-enter the country. He was not entering, he was re-entering the country. The right of re-entry is only given to Kenyan citizens because you have a right of residence and being present in the country. So to ask a Kenyan citizen to take a visa is an insult. Not to mention that what is the intention, what is the mischief behind asking you to take a visa? When you take a visa, it means you are submitting yourself or acknowledging that I'm a foreigner. Foreigners have limited rights within this country. They are rights that foreigners do not enjoy. You can be deported the very next day when you come in on a visa. Foreigners do not enjoy political rights. Miguna is a politician. So it means he cannot exercise his rights as a Kenyan citizen, which were recognized earlier on when he stood for election, when he comes in on a visa. Foreigners have limited rights to ownership of property. This is another way of dispossessing a person of property. So what is the mischief behind? Why is it that they insist on giving a Kenyan citizen a visa? In any case, the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act says it is the choice of the person who holds dual citizenship to decide which passport to use.
Which comes to the Canadian passport. He couldn't use that coming in. He was told to hand it over.
But for what reason? Miguna was coming in as a Kenyan. When Miguna left this country, he was forcefully taken out as a Kenyan, not as a Canadian. When the court gave orders, the court, number one, suspended, nullified the declaration that he is not a Kenyan citizen. That's the first thing that order says. The immigration officials have decided to look at this, only one specific line of the order, ignoring every other order that the court gave. Number one, the court suspended the declaration of Miguna not to be a non-citizen. So you first, if that is suspended, it means he is recognized as a Kenyan citizen. And therefore, when he comes into the country, you cannot then subject him to treatment as a foreigner. To ask him to apply for a visa is to refuse to acknowledge the fact that the court already recognized and said, this is a Kenyan citizen, Kenyan-born citizen. And that's the mischief that the immigration was trying to do. They were trying to circumvent, in fact, they were trying to negate the very order that the court gave. They were not saying that produce your passport and we will simply give you entry into the country. No, they wanted to give him a visa so that they can limit his rights within the country, they can limit his movement, they can deport him the very next day.
So did he have any other options? Do you think he had any other options, Chacho?
Well, being that he's Canadian citizen, at least give him some sense that he does not, presumably he belongs to a particular state and is not stateless.
Yeah.
But then he's a Kenyan by birth. He wanted to be here. Every Kenyan wants to participate in the processes of development of his country. He wants to participate in the governance processes. He wants to participate in whichever manner, whether it's through criticism or through protagonist or antagonism. He wanted to participate in the progression of Kenya. And I think those options were denied for him. And even the options that were being provided for him by being given visas, as has been said, was to limit where his passion is.
Yeah.
So ideally, the government had limited his options to participate as a Kenyan the way he wanted. And maybe now he can do it now as a Canadian, and now to portray Kenya badly, in the badly limelight outside there. And so it's still quite unfortunate. He has no options. Because you see, the challenge is that even when you look at the international norms that guide citizenship, there is no outright. The international laws are not very outright on citizenship of a particular individual. So he cannot run to any law anywhere or any institution to force government of Kenya to accept him as a citizen, because most of the questions of nationality and citizenship have been left on the jurisdiction of the local national laws. And so he's actually helpless, because it all depends on government agencies, and the lawyers have tried all they can with regards to the courts. The governments have defied the courts. So where do you run to?
All right. So what next for him? He is in Dubai, as you've said. Where is he going? Is he going back to Canada? Can he come back to the country?
Miguna is not wants to come back to Kenya. In fact, he has already given instructions that he must be brought back to Kenya. He is not going to leave Dubai.
So he will stay in the airport?
He will come back to Kenya, and we will take every action, because I, as a Kenyan citizen, this cannot be done to another Kenyan. On principle, there is no way that this can be done to another Kenyan citizen, and we sit back and be happy. So we'll take whatever action is necessary to ensure and see to it that one of our own is brought back to the country. If the government has an issue with him, let them deal with him within the law. How is it that our own government, that is actually obliged by the Constitution to respect, to uphold the rule of law and human rights, is now at the forefront of violating those rights?
But this is the same government that has been disobeying court orders.
Precisely, and I guess we are now we've scratched above the surface, and we're seeing what our government truly is and what they're made of. It's most unfortunate that we're celebrating violation of court orders, that even advocates, some advocates, because of how you feel, celebrate the violation of court orders. My job as an advocate depends on the respect of a court order, because then I'm doing nothing. If I go to court and I cannot have any comfort that when I go to court, the process will be respected, we go there because they are the neutral arbiters. But if now we cannot take any comfort in court orders being obeyed, what's the point?
So let's say the government continues disobeying court orders, and then what options do you have?
Oh, it certainly cannot last very long. Unfortunately, something will give. I am confident that something will give. Impunity, as the judge said yesterday, I like the quote, there can be no immunity for impunity. This is how revolutions are born. People will get very, very tired. And then, just like Abdulaziz in Morocco went and set himself on fire because he just could not take it. And that sparked off a revolution. Very soon Kenyans will, now that we can see this is what we're dealing with and that it affects all of us. We cannot pretend that it does not affect all of us. It affects each and every one of us.
All right.
The reason why I was brutalized by a policeman is because he feels oppressed. So he looked at me and so, this is a woman, I can oppress her. This is a small person. So because I am oppressed, I can oppress the lesser person. So I will oppress them.
So then, Churchill, can the international community do anything to intervene in this case?
The international community may not have jurisdiction to.
Okay.
Because they might not have jurisdiction to intervene on the cases. But they can be able to intervene on the basis of opinion juris, just providing opinion of court. And I think this is what has happened before in a couple of the other cases that have happened around the world. They will provide the opinion on court, but in many cases you find that in some of the cases that have gone before them on matters of nationality and dualism, we saw it between Eritrea and Ethiopia after the war in 1998 to 2000. The court will not give judgment because they'll say this is outside their jurisdiction, but they can give an opinion of court, which so often will also have an impact. The other thing is maybe on the questions of human rights advocacy at the global level, where you can raise this as a question of human rights. And so when you raise it as a question of human rights, the international bodies and human rights bodies and civil society groups will be able to package the government on the wrong side.
Okay.
And so it can be done on the basis of that opinion of the court or on the basis of international pressure. But then it will be impossible to say that there is a specific judicial institution at the global level that is able to offer a specific judgment on this particular issue.
Yeah.
In fact, they will so often say this is within, you know, it's a national issue.
Okay.
So the moment it becomes a national issue, it still comes to the helplessness of the advocates.
All right.
Yes.
So,
We can challenge our government at the regional level and international bodies. We have an African Court on Human and People's Rights. There's an African Commission. We can go there if after we have exhausted the remedies here and we have seen that we cannot get any help from this government. All is not lost.
All right.
That is how we landed at the ICC, because we did not have confidence or faith in our own systems, and therefore we went to another body. But it is unfortunate when we have to go outside to seek help. What does that say of our own country?
And especially if it is citizens.
Yes.
Because most often we find that many of the agencies that goes to these regional bodies for judicial decisions are governments.
okay.
Governments against governments, like the British against the French, on the case of the Morocco and the Tunisia case of nationality. But when you find citizens of a specific country going to the regional bodies to seek justice, it is a problem.
All right. So then...
It shows how much that country's judicial systems are weak.
All right. We are aware that the Canadian government tried to do much to help the situation, but what more could it have done, Julie?
Now, the Canadian government was just doing what it would do for any of its citizens, and it's really unfortunate that we have the mirror contrast of one government coming in to take care of a person they consider their own, and then on the other hand, the Kenyan government rejecting and mistreating its citizen. Now, the Canadian government, I mean, subject to also what Miguna wants, has done everything that they can do. They have ministered to him. They ensured, tried to see that he has his food. Even right now in Dubai, the Canadian consulate there has already jumped right in and is seeking to take care of him and address his rights. I suppose if he wanted to go to Canada, he could. But Miguna does not want to go to Canada. He wants to come to Kenya,
so
his
then
country
can the Chief Justice intervene? Now,
the Chief Justice can't just intervene by himself, but he actually can lend voice to what is going on. On the very disobedience of court orders, the sheer disregard, the contumaciousness by government officials it's very, very disturbing. In fact, we have not just gone back to the dark days, we are beyond the dark days. And it portends a negative, I mean, it doesn't say well for our country.
All right, so I'll let you have the final word on this. What next for Kenyans, you know?
I think for me, in terms of my last word, is just to challenge government agencies. That there is need for us to look at nationality as an opportunity to brand the myth of the country.
All right.
A myth that can be able to attract other citizens of other countries to come to Kenya and even drain other countries in our